No, it's been really a pleasure to come to Greece. It's our first time. And we're just taking in all the history from, a couple thousand years ago, and now, of course, with this conference and the genocide of the Pontian Greeks. It's been super enlightening for me. And, of course, I'm constantly drawing connections between our experience in Rwanda during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994 and the stories here. Really good conversations with people who are, like third generation, and I'm thinking, what will it be like in Rwanda when that's 100 years in the past, and what can we do in the meantime to make it safer, make it not happen again.
That's the goal of this conference. Yeah. If we make that happen, that's going to be awesome. So it's timelines intertwined. Yeah, the past sees the future and vice versa.
Yeah, I think we often focus kind of like specifically, like maybe like a microscope in on genocide, but really genocide comes from thinking that says my world would be better without you in it. That kind of exclusive, we're going to solve a problem by getting rid of somebody, then all of a sudden we come back and we're like, okay, wait, we're not just talking about genocide, we're talking about life. Right now, so many places in the world, especially in America, there's a polarization that's happening, this separation of people, the us and them thinking. And so while we have to study the specific stories, of course, we're compelled to, of the different genocides that have happened, we also look at what's happening today and we say, whoa, there's that same kind of thinking that we're going to make our country better by getting rid of somebody. We're going to make our community better by getting rid of somebody. So that relevance is something that always challenges me as I listen to the lectures and I think about, how we will learn from these stories.
Your experience in Rwanda must have been incredible in all aspects, good and bad. Do tell us more. I was fascinated when I read about it. I could not believe that me, as a participant in this conference, as a Pontian myself, did not know the depth of torture that's taking place there. It was amazing.
As a kid, I read about the Holocaust, and I was so inspired by people who hid Jews during that time, and never knowing that years later I'd have my family in a little country. I mean, Rwanda is this beautiful little country. You're thinking, if there's a place that you'd think something would never happen, Rwanda could be that place. The people super friendly and hospitable, and you're like, wait a minute. How can this beautiful, hospitable, friendly little country fall into 100 days of actual neighbors killing neighbors? And that's so hard to wrap your mind around. But then, in the years since then, can neighbors, generous neighbors who went from generous to murderous, can they ever be trusted again? And that's why I think Rwanda's story is so compelling for many of us, because they are making that incredibly difficult journey back from genocide, from neighbor. You can't trust your government, can't trust the churches, can't trust your neighbors. How do you rebuild trust? Those are some of the lessons. I get to go back to Rwanda every year, sometimes like this year 6 times. And in going back to Rwanda, I'm constantly looking for those stories, those tools of how are people doing it? How are they rebuilding trust?
Is there hope? Are they healing? They're doing it.
There is an enormous hope. And I mean, human, and so it's a spectrum. You have some people they have so rebuilt relationships with the people who killed their family that they're invited to the wedding. You have other people who are still struggling with much pain and grief and anger. It's a spectrum. But the people who are really leading the way are incredibly inspiring, and they give us hope that we can actually make new pathways in our brain. If we continually fire the old pathway of 1994 in Rwanda's case and the genocide, and we never look for the good today, we can be stuck back there. But the people of Rwanda, I think out of necessity, they look for the good today. How am I going to provide for my kids today? And what good can I be part of myself today? And that kind of living in today, not forgetting the past, learning from the past, but living in today, gives me incredible hope, because they see people different. They allow themselves to build new pathways, as it were, about this person. So when I see them, I don't simply see them as the killer of 1994. I actually see them as the neighbor of today, the person who helped in planting and harvesting my crops, we begin to build new pathways, and that reframing is, to me, one of the most vital tools in the healing process that I see in Rwanda.
This is an experience of a lifetime, and Rwanda stands as an example for all of us, in a personal level, in a social level, in a political level, in all aspects.
Much
That
to
is,
learn.
yes. Do you believe that if people stood up in the past more profoundly, more deeply, and just stated that no more, that's it, this is a crime and it shouldn't be happen, would that be avoided for Rwanda?
Yeah, in so many places, we look to other people to draw the line. We'll look to the government to draw the line. Or perhaps certain people in their faith, they'll look to God to draw the line. And I'm saying, no, it's up to us to draw the line. And often we think, well, what can we do? We look at these stories and we see what one person did, and we're like, okay, I might not stop the whole thing, not change the world, but for this person, for this family, for this grandmother, I can make a difference. And so it is a call for us to draw the line and not wait until a genocide, of course, but when we see anything happening, on the street, in our families, what are the values that we wake up and practice every day? And looking at Rwanda, we've come up with 3 values. An environment of respect where we can learn each other's story. And as I learn your story, empathy begins to grow because I place myself next to you. And then I'm like, hey, would you come meet my family? Inclusion becomes a very natural response. So these values of respect, empathy, and inclusion are some values that I arm myself each day. I want to learn people's stories. I learned the story of a gentleman here from Yazidi who he was an interpreter for the army for 5 years, and I'm so excited to learn more of his story. And as I learn his story, the empathy grows, and then the inclusion, it's not a forced thing, it's a desired thing. That's a big change from like, you should include these people to I want to include these people. So those values, I'm pretty, as you can tell, pretty excited about an environment of respect, empathy growing, inclusion is desirable now, not a duty.